Hey, so this is Future Salty coming to you post-editing. I had a really hard time recording this footage from Planet Zoo. I tried 3 different times to record my own gameplay, but every time I may as well have been showing you guys a PowerPoint presentation. It froze up and stuttered so badly. The audio wasn't synced up. It was a mess. So the video you are actually going to be seeing here is from the official Planet Zoo YouTube. This is not from any YouTubers and their own builds. This is from Planet Zoo. I was really hoping I'd be able to bring you my own gameplay, but unfortunately, in order to even get this review out, I have to use the official footage. So sorry about that. I may try again to show you some real footage, but until then, my thoughts on the game haven't changed. But just so you know, I do mention some stuttering recording in my review until I realized that the recording was unusable. So just keep that in mind. My thoughts on the game haven't changed, but just for you guys to know, enjoy the rest of the video. Planet Zoo was officially released November 5th, 2019. The store page reads, "Build a world for wildlife in Planet Zoo. From the developers of Planet Coaster and Zoo Tycoon comes the ultimate zoo sim. Construct detailed habitats, manage your zoo, and meet authentic, living animals who think, feel, and explore the world you create around them." Initially, Planet Zoo was allowed for Steam users who purchased the deluxe edition of Planet Zoo to test their beta. YouTube was filled with these beta testing videos, and hype for Zoo Tycoon's quote-unquote sequel was at an all-time high. Zoo Tycoon 2 was my personal drug as a child. I loved watching the animals and building the perfect zoo, as well as making these reserves where I could close the zoo and let the animals live as nature intended. Not hunting the antelope until they starved, and I had to send in zookeepers to give them fake carcasses so I could feel successful. You know, like every child. I was not one of these initial players, and actually ended up purchasing the standard edition of the game at full price the week it came out, but not the day of. I've logged about 55 hours in the game so far, most of which have been in the game's career mode, though I have played in each of the 4 game types so that I can give a proper review of the game. Before I start spouting my 2 cents, though, I do want to detail out exactly what's in the game for those who like to be super informed before making any purchasing decisions. I wouldn't call these so much as spoilers, but I will be listing out all of the animals in the game, as well as giving detailed explanations of all the mechanics. So if you're someone who likes to explore these types of things for yourself, you may want to skip to the end of this review just to get my thoughts and opinions. I'm going to first go over the core mechanics of the game, since they are prevalent in all of the game modes, before I really dig into the different game modes themselves. Planet Zoo is like Zoo Tycoon on cocaine. Unlike previous iterations, you aren't just managing the animals' welfare and the zoo's generic expenses. You're doing all of that while making sure your staff are happy by building them certain staff facilities close enough to the enclosure so they don't spend literal months walking, but not so close to the paths that your guests get grumpy because they see a zookeeper's hut and have the magic broken. But also letting the guests close enough to the animals that they don't complain about the views, but also not so close that the animals become stressed and you end up with protesters in your zoo, which will then cost you money because there's an inspector here to make sure you aren't fucking up too badly. Habitats are no longer fences with terrain paint, but enclosures that have to be temperature controlled with a certain amount of space, water, and climbing areas. Speaking of climbing, you have to worry about certain animals climbing or jumping out of their enclosures, so you have to control the fence type and height to give what you need. All of these also need power and water, so you have transformers and water treatment facilities that can only control a small range. Basically, Planet Zoo is best described as the old saying, "You can't please everyone," and then trying to do that. One of the big highlights of this game are the extensive building tools. I've never really experienced anything like it. I haven't played Planet Coaster or Jurassic Park Evolution, which are Frontier's more notable titles, but from what I've heard, the building mechanics are similar to those titles as well. I personally had no issues getting the hang of the building tools, and they were really intuitive for me, though I've heard that's not the same for everyone. But with a little practice, I think just about anyone who plays this game can make some really spectacular buildings. Now for the part everyone's been waiting for, I'm sure. The animals. So there are two types of animals in Planet Zoo: habitat animals and exhibit animals. They can both be bought and sold for either money or conservation points, which are earned by releasing animals into the wild and also slowly over time, but they behave in very different ways. Habitat animals are the ones you build fences for. You spend time building their habitat to your liking. They have spectacular animations and noises. You can watch them interact with one another, and they are really unique and fun to watch. Habitat animals are the animals you think of when you go to the zoo. You got dog-shaped animals, cat-shaped animals, giraffes, the works. However, exhibit animals live in a glass box. They have set layouts that have limited customization options, which can be changed by flipping some switches. You can't place things yourself, and while they have some animations, I personally have a hard time even seeing the animals in the boxes. Exhibit animals consist mostly of reptiles, frogs, insects, and whatever snails are. They can earn you some money in donations and up your education rating, but in general, aren't that exciting and are easy to forget until you get a notification that they're all dying because they've reproduced approximately 1,000,000 times, and you have to release 12 of the things into the wild. Because of that, they can be a decent way to farm conservation points on occasion. You get about 1 to 5 on average for each one, so a decent chunk if you're getting rid of 10 at a time, but in general, they're pretty easily forgotten. So now I'm going to list out all of the animals that are in the zoo, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for mispronouncing some of them. There are 50 habitat animals: aardvark, African buffalo, African elephant, African wild dog, Aldabra giant tortoise, American bison, Bach train camel, Bayard's tapir, Bengal tiger, black wildebeest, bongo, bonobo, Borneo orangutan, cheetah, Chinese pangolin, common octopus, common warthog, Formsian black bear, Galapagos giant tortoise, gemsbok, gharial, giant panda, greater flamingo, grizzly bear, Himalayan brown bear, hippopotamus, Indian elephant, Indian peafowl, Indian rhinoceros, Japanese macaw, mandrill, Nile monitor, nyla, okapi, plain zebra, pronghorn antelope, red panda, red-ruffed lemur, reticulated giraffe, ring-tailed lemur, sable antelope, saltwater crocodile, Siberian tiger, snow leopard, spotted hyena, springbok, timber wolf, West African lion, western chimpanzee, western lowland gorilla. So, we talked about the habitat animals, and now these are the exhibit animals. There are 23 exhibit animals currently in the game: Amazonian giant centipede, boa constrictor, Brazilian salmon pink tarantula, Brazilian wandering spider, common death adder, eastern brown snake, giant burrowing cockroach, giant desert hairy scorpion, giant forest scorpion, giant tiger land snail, Gila monster, golden poison frog, Goliath beetle, Goliath bird eater, Goliath frog, green iguana, layman's poison frog, lesser Antillean iguana, Mexican red-knee tarantula, puff adder, titan beetle, western diamondback rattlesnake, and yellow anaconda. And there are 3 additional animals only available in the deluxe edition, which are the Komodo dragon, pygmy hippo, and Thomas's gazelle. As you can see, there's quite a variety of available animals, and each one has spectacular animations and unique sounds. I personally find it really fun to watch them interact with other items, especially animals that use climbing structures, which you can make yourself, so that's really fun. So now with the animals aside, I'm going to talk about the game modes. There are currently 4 game modes in Planet Zoo: Career, Sandbox, Challenge, and Franchise. Sandbox is exactly what it sounds like. You're given unlimited money and conservation points. You pick the biome you want to start your zoo in and go buck wild. Everything is unlocked. No need to do research. Build what you want, how you want from the start. This is very much for the type of people who want to build stuff, be it enclosures, buildings, landscapes, all sorts of stuff, or for people who don't want to bother with the management side of this life and management sim. You can toggle guests and staff needs, as well as animal aging and death. You won't be limited by resources, and you can basically do what you want with no consequences. Personally, I won't be spending much time in this mode, but I can see the value of it. And just because I won't be playing in it very often doesn't mean I won't be playing it at all. It can kind of be nice to just be able to make habitats of my favorite dog-shaped animals, of which there are 3, and make their habitats absolute paradises as I watch from afar, living the dream of being a zookeeper as a child. Oh god, that really worked out, didn't it? Career mode. Let's move on. Career mode is the mode I have most enjoyed so far. It consists of a dozen scenarios of which you are put in charge of a zoo and have particular goals to meet. This can be anything from having X number of animals in your zoo, making a certain amount of money in a year, or having so many guests in at one time, or sell so much merchandise, etc., etc. You get the idea. The first 4 scenarios consist of the tutorial, and even if you know you will be mostly playing in Sandbox or really any of the other modes, I highly recommend playing these first 4 scenarios. They break down everything from placing buildings to building enclosures, dealing with animal illnesses, as well as staff and guests alike. I got through the first 3 scenarios of the tutorial in only a couple of hours. The 4th one gave me a little bit of trouble at first, but I eventually figured it out in some hours as well. The 4th scenario is basically just a blank zoo you're told to fill up. Personally, I found the most challenging part to be just finding a place to put the animals in career. Personally, I found the most challenging part to finding a place to put the animals. In career mode, your ability to mold the terrain is disabled, which meant I couldn't just flatten the place and put everything where I wanted. I had to work around this very mountainous area where if it was too steep, I couldn't put a fence or a path, which was a huge pain and kind of the main challenge of it all. Additionally, this is where I first discovered the real challenge of weather. Most of the time, most of the animals were fine, but when winter hit and it snowed, many of the animals became distressed, so I had to wrestle with that. The game mode is so far my favorite, though. I really enjoy being placed in broken zoos and going around and fixing them. There's just something really satisfying about making enclosures fit their animals and getting everyone happy and healthy again that just really tickles my need for organization. However, there are 2 critiques I have about this mode. The first being is there's a lot of waiting, more so than in the other game modes because you have specific goals in mind you have to meet before you can move on. Many of the scenarios require making X amount of money in a year or receiving so many stars on inspection, both of which require time. The inspections really aren't that hard as long as you don't have any starving animals that are actively spreading the plague. It's pretty easy to get at least 3 stars, and I've only received lower than 4 stars 2 or 3 times. Inspectors come about every 2 years. Years don't really take that long. If you let the game play at normal speed, it only takes 10-20 minutes, I think. I'm not actually sure how long it takes time to pass, but it's not excruciating. However, most of the time you're not going to be able to just sit and let time go because you're going to get 10 million notifications every 30 seconds about something. Be it you finish some research or the fucking peacocks are diseased again, which is going to mean pausing so you can micromanage something for a second before the animal moves somewhere, or somebody else has some other personal emergency on the other side of the zoo, so you try and handle one thing at a time. And then you wait and do it all again in another minute. So the inspector really takes some time to come around and then spend several months completing the inspection. Same with getting money. At a certain point in the scenario, I knew I was going to be able to make the money goal, but it was March in the game, and the reward ticks over on the new year. I got to the point in the game where I had everything so in line, I wasn't really having any problems with the animals anymore, and just put the game on 3 times speed for a few minutes until it registered the goal had been met. I would personally prefer if there is some yearly goal, if at any point I've met it, it should just tick over, not just at the beginning of the year. That would save me a lot of time. The other issues I have with career mode are there just isn't enough scenarios. In my first 30 hours, I played through half the scenarios. Given the tutorial was 4 of those 6 scenarios, and they didn't take very long, I would expect to see more from this game mode since it doesn't have much replayability. Unless you want to put your own rules in place to make it harder the second time around, you really can't do these again. I hope there are free updates that adds career mode and not just a bunch of DLC packages where, for the price of another game, I can play this one some more. The last two modes are Challenge Mode and Franchise Mode, and they're essentially the same, with Challenge Mode being an offline version. This mode was actually added during the beta. Originally, the game was only supposed to have 3 modes, Franchise Mode, Sandbox, and Career, but a lot of people had issues really getting the full experience of the game because the animal marketplace in the online Franchise Mode. People are having trouble just buying animals because the market was online and there was a delay that allowed for animals to be displayed, that they already had been sold, so a player would click adopt only to see the animals already gone. It seems this problem has been remedied by removing the endless scroll, so the market refreshes more often, but I did have an issue with the market just freezing. I could only purchase animals by specifically selecting the species in the drop-down menu, but even then it would freeze up. After a minute or two, I would have to close the whole thing and reopen it, in which time the animal may have been sold. A huge problem when I'm trying to decide which animal I want, and it freezes. The only other problem I had with franchise mode was actually being able to get animals I wanted. The problem with having an online market economy is that the people who play first or longer are going to end up with the best animals because they've bred the best animals and have the most money. As far as I can tell, you can't set the price you sell animals for, which is probably a good thing, but the game auto-sets it based on the animal and its genetics, which means most of the animals are ridiculously expensive because the players that have been playing the longest have greater genetics in their animals, so the preset prices are significantly higher, like several thousand conservation points or several $1,000s, of which, when you're just starting a zoo, you can't really afford. In the several hours I played in franchise mode, I only managed to get a couple of peacocks and some African wild dogs. Without high-quality animals, I had an issue getting money and conservation points, which meant I couldn't buy any new animals. However, in the same time I spent in challenge mode, I managed to buy timberwolves, spotted hyenas, Bengal tigers, aardvarks, and red pandas. Not only good animals, but animals I actually wanted to play with. Challenge mode I found much more exciting than sandbox mode. The limiting resources of having to budget your money and research items before you can use them was much more satisfying. The animals aren't as high quality as in franchise because they're just randomly generated animals. The animals aren't as high quality as in franchise because they're just randomly generated animals, but they were consistently more affordable. Even rarer animals I was able to purchase. I will mention, however, while playing challenge mode, I did have some stuttering issues, as you can probably see in this game's recording, as well as some staff glitches. I suspect this was caused by OBS and not actually the game, as the problems disappeared when I was recording, but I do feel like it's worth mentioning. All that being said, would I recommend the game? Short answer, yes. Long answer, I enjoyed the organized chaos, the multitasking, the building, and the game is just really pretty to look at. If you're someone who enjoys other tycoon games or games like The Sims, then I think you'll enjoy this game as well. The building system is robust, the animals are fun to watch, the animations are lively, and the sounds they make are so wonderful and realistic. My dog regularly barked from the sound of the Timberwolves. The game is challenging enough to manage that it takes some thought, but not so much so that it gets tedious, even in sections that can be slow. The game is also not super punishing. From my experience, things can always be fixed. It's just a matter of how much you're willing to move around. The game's launch was a bit rocky. There were a lot of bugs, some of which were game-breaking. However, Frontier has been quick to take care of those. In the 3 weeks the game has been live, there have been 5 patches, and since the second or third patch, I haven't seen any more game-breaking bugs, and the rest have been fairly minimal. As a person who almost never buys games at full price, at $45 it's one of the ones I would buy again. It's not quite as expensive as your usual AAA titles, but also not cheap enough that I would just purchase it on a whim. That being said, I think the replayability of the overall game, as well as being a game I can see myself spending hundreds of hours in, I think the price is worth it. If you can find it on sale, even better. Though considering it's a new release, I doubt there will be any significant discounts anytime soon, but who knows? Winter sales are right around the corner, so it might. If you're looking to treat yourself, however, I would say this game is worth it. That being said, which edition do I recommend? At this time, there are currently 2 editions. A standard edition is $44.99 US, and the deluxe edition is $54.99. The deluxe edition includes everything from the standard, but includes the soundtrack, wallpapers, and 3 animals listed in the previous section. Personally, though, for an additional $10, the deluxe edition isn't worth it. You can find the soundtracks and wallpapers online, and the 3 animals for $10 is just not worth it. Another possible issue I've heard about are possible future DLCs. Now, I'm not inherently against DLCs, especially since this feels like a finished game. There are plenty of animals, plenty of building items. I've only played some 50-something hours, and I haven't seen nearly half the items. There's so much you can do with this game, so many animals to play with. It feels like a full game. It doesn't feel like anything is being kept out just to make a DLC later. Most of the animals I think people would want, such as pandas, big cats, elephants, and such, are in the base game, as well as plenty of others I didn't even know I wanted until I stumbled across them. There are not just 5 types of the same 3 animals to skimp out on meshes. There's a good variety of animals here to explore. That being said, depending on the price, I would not be upset if Frontier decided to release some animal packs down the line as a DLC if they are done well. However, I've done some poking around in Jurassic World Evolution, and they've released some dinosaur packs there for $5.99, which is not a bad price, but they only include 3 dinos, and personally, unless the animals were just my absolute favorites, I doubt I'd be paying $6 for 3 animals. However, like I said before, even if there's no additional way to get new animals, I feel the number of animals in the game is enough to enjoy the experience. Now, that's the end of the review, that's the end of covering all the game mechanics. But before I finish off this video, I do want to give a couple of tips and tricks I learned along the way, just so anyone else who's interested in this game won't struggle as much when you're getting started. 1. Hard shelters are calculated by roofs and not walls. So if you need more hard shelter space, add another roof tile or 2. 2. If you run out of money and end up in debt, don't panic. The game won't end. There are some things you can still buy. You can still pay your staff and feed your animals. You can also replace damaged and vandalized items, as well as purchase marketing packages. 3. Along those same lines, if you end up in a pretty deep hole, the best way I found to get money is to stop researching, cut bets back to a minimum, 1 or 2, depending on the number of animals you have, because they are the most expensive staff members you have. Close stores that are in low demand and fire the vendors. Cut the food quality of your animals down and purchase a good marketing package. In my experience, the largest expenses in your zoo are alwaws going to be animal feed and your staff. By lowering that and getting more customers in, you're going to be able to get out of debt. 4. Use Zoopedia more. The tutorial doesn't really cover everything you can use it for, and it took me a while to figure out it is the thing that tells you what kind of fences you need, how tall they need to be, how much space and what kind of space they need, as well as the animal population size you need. Some animals only will take 1 male and 1 female, while some will have 1 male and 5 females, or 2 males and 2 females, and Zoopedia is the place that's going to tell you what it is. 5. You can put animals in the same enclosure even if they won't get an interspecies bonus. As long as they won't eat each other and their terrain needs don't conflict, they can stay in the same habitat without any issues. 6. Sometimes if you have an elevated path above an enclosure, the game will read that the education facilities you're using are too far away from the animals to be useful. When this happens, activate the stereo or education board you want, switch to the education map, and wave around the speaker and board until you find a spot that it turns blue. 7. On that same note, sometimes the game doesn't like it when you have staff paths and habitat doors underneath a raised path. It can cause the zoo staff to be unable to get to an enclosure, and your animals will suffer. Rest in peace, red pandas. 8. However many trash cans you think you need, add more. 9. A good way to get a feel for the construction tools is to use a base, i.e. some item in the shop that has a structure already, and then add things on top of it. For example, hard shelter. Take one for the habitat and add rocks around it to make it look like a cave. Or from the facilities, take a plain shop and add walls from construction to spice it up. Don't let the construction tools intimidate you. Make some ugly buildings and practice. 10. All that being said, if you have your mechanics research different themes, you can also get some really nice preformed shells to put your buildings in. 11. Building is actually important. Guests want a nice looking zoo, and plants, statues, fountains, and other construction things help with that. So you cannot avoid learning the construction tools, so just do it. No one's going to see your strange first tries of a building, but learn. Just do your best, okay? So hopefully this review was helpful for you guys. I know I've mentioned before that I won't be playing Planet Zoo on this channel, at least not outside of videos like this, but I would like to make more reviews like this in the future, even for games I don't play on this channel. For example, I'm hoping to do an Assassin's Creed Odyssey review once I finish the game. Over 100 hours in, and I still haven't finished it. But yeah, so I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making it, and I really enjoyed Planet Zoo. So just remember, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe so you won't miss the next video, and I know what you guys would like to see. So I'll see you guys next time.